Hi again. This video is for those who are volunteering in the year one classroom. So everyone else, you guys can skip on. This is for those of you who are volunteering in year one, especially those who are going to be teaching in year one. So this is going to review our teacher planner and a little bit of the curriculum that you're going to be given. I'm going to be sharing my screen at a point. So here it begins. Year one, you guys are tackling 2 units of study. The first unit is reconciliation. The second unit is salvation history. So you're going to be going through those in that pre-scheduled, lesson by lesson calendar that I showed off before. So you're going to actually be starting, our first night is going to be sort of a good old-fashioned family night where the kiddos are going to receive their Bibles and have their Bibles blessed and do a little bit of a Bible lesson that I will lead. And then the next class, which I want to say is the 26th of September, around then, that will be the first chapter of the reconciliation unit. So you're going to be tackling this. You're going one by one, following that calendar of classes until we conclude the unit. Now, what's important for you to know is you will be taking attendance via sign in and sign out with parents. That is very important because if a kiddo misses the class, they're absent. I note it in my digital records, and anyone that's absent from either year one or year two, their parent receives an email with instructions for how to complete the lesson at home, because in year one, we require 100% completion of all the lessons. So that's why we have this calendar. That's why we all do the same thing, because I'm supporting you guys on the back end with the instructions for the parent to follow at home. Now, for all of our lessons, they can do it fairly easily at home, with the caveat the salvation history is a little bit more challenging. But for reconciliation, there's an online module that the kiddos can log into and complete at home. So that is not anything you ever need to be aware of. I just share it with you so that you understand, why it's especially important that we all stay on the same calendar, because those kiddos that miss your class, they will cover that information at home. Hopefully, reasonably close to their missed class. Sometimes it'll take them a few weeks to get it done. So keep that in mind. Now, the other thing for you to be aware of is for our year one and year two classes, you guys are, your curriculum is based on the Catholic Children's Bible. So let me grab that. Just go through the background. So this is the Catholic Children's Bible. I just happened to grab one that I've annotated a bit. The kiddos are going to receive this. And you guys will have some extras in the classroom, and we may have extras just for you to take. It depends upon what Bibles are not picked up from last year. But that isn't going to be something that we have until, midway through the year. We know that Bibles that have been abandoned and could be claimed by volunteers. But this Bible is incredible for children. This is something that you can look through verse by verse. Everything's here, like a Rail Bible. It's slightly larger. The sections are a little bit more, separated from each other. And then periodically, at the important parts, you will come to what are called featured stories. So these are like indicated by leaves. Let me show that off in the text. So if you look really closely, right there, kind of in the middle, oh, it's having a hard time focusing. Ugh, never mind. There's leaves, like little green leaves. Ooh, hello. Is it gonna come back? All right, let's hope that all right, there we go. I just totally screwed over my camera. There are little green leaves in the Bible. And when you are reading through this and you hit one of those, you know that there's a featured story nearby. It's usually the next page. The featured story will have an illustration of like what is happening in this section of the Bible. It'll have a snippet of the Bible readings from the whole section that's highlighted with the leaves. And then there's an understand it section. a live it section and a tell it section on the other side of the page. Now, every unit that, or every lesson that you teach in reconciliation and in salvation history is going to go into these children's Bibles, and it's going to go into a featured story. So you're going to be using these a lot. So something to be aware of, and your teacher, your lesson planner is going to point out when you're going to be diving into these sections. So let me actually go into the lesson plan. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right. Here's our reconciliation teaching guide. So it's black and white in this view. This is the top. And as we scroll down, copyright, we get to the kind of table of contents that lays out the 8 lessons that you're going to be focusing on, the 8 chapters in this unit. And it actually even calls attention to, excuse me, the featured story that you will be focusing on for that lesson. So if we continue going down, this is going to talk about, again, the overall course objectives. It's pretty good to scan through this material when you receive your teaching instructions. And then, like most of our lesson planners or teaching guides here, there is a breakdown, an eagle eye view, as I like to say, of the curriculum. So you can do a quick scan of chapters 1 through 8 and kind of understand like what we're focusing on chapter by chapter, like where we're going to. So it tells you, the titles of the chapter and what the lesson goals are, the featured stories, and the keywords for each of those lessons. So that's all in here. This page actually shows you the contents, like the material that the children will be receiving. So this one's from our Eucharist, but it's the same thing except blue and particular to the reconciliation unit. The children will receive a folder, and it has like a little map in it. It has these little leaflets, and this is going to be what you hand out to the kids each lesson. So this is chapter 1. So when you're covering chapter 1, you would hand this, and this will be referred to in the lesson plan, but it's activities that you can do in the classroom. And then when you send the kiddos home, you send them home with this, because on the back, there's information for their families to understand what they were taught. So again, this one was from our Eucharist unit, but it's identical at an eagle eye level to what you'll see in the reconciliation. So this lays out what you'll see in those folders that the children receive. This actually gives you an eagle eye view of a lesson plan. So it points out the different components. It talks about, you can see the lesson goals laid out here. You start with, looking at the background as a catechist. That's something for you to read through to understand before you launch into the actual teaching plan, which goes, right at the opening prayer. So this walks you through the framework of the teacher planner that you receive, the curriculum you receive. And if we keep scrolling down, this is actually pointing out what the children receive. So you'll see, the different elements of their activity sheet. There's a little treasure map with our reconciliation unit. And we keep going. And here we are at chapter 1 in our lesson plan. So for those of you who have no teaching experience like me, I've been volunteering and I've taught most of these grade levels at this point, but I don't teach, outside of faith formation, so I don't have experience. These are written for you, for those of you who don't have teaching experience. Oh, baby girl keeps trying to eat my hair. Huh, Julia. So if you start looking, when you get into the lesson plan, I would take an hour ahead of time, not right before class, but maybe an hour on the weekend or a morning in the week prior to class, and just look at the lesson. Read through it from front to back, and you'll understand kind of what you're going to be building toward when you go into the classroom. And as you start to look at this, these there's sections, subdivided into sections, and it even tells you about how much time each section will take, and it should be about an hour. As you start teaching, especially if you're new, you're going to get a feel for how long it will take you to get through a lesson. And I'm telling you, when you start, you're probably going to go faster than you intend to. So you might have some time left at the end. So it doesn't hurt to have some coloring sheets or other activities in the barrel for if you get done like 15 minutes early. But as we start looking at this teacher planner, you're going to see there's sections and then there's bullets below that section. Those bullets are literally the instructions to you as a teacher of what you should be doing. So let's start right at the top. Invite the children to turn to page 1 in their chapter 1 activity booklets and locate the prayer on the front page. So you kind of skim that, and all the opening prayer sections are going to be repetitive. So once you've taught a couple of these lessons, you're going to understand, like, we start with that cover lesson or cover prayer. We start with the sign of the cross. We practice that together. Have a volunteer say the prayer. You say the prayer. One of your assistants says the prayer. Conclude with the sign of the cross, etc. Then there's going, in this section, there's an engage activity. So it's saying, invite the children to recall everything they know about Jesus and record their answers on the board. So you'll have a dry erase board marker and you'll be like, hey, what do you guys know about Jesus? And then you'll turn, maybe one of your classroom assistants could actually do it. And the kids might say, he's a good shepherd. He's a beard. He's a man. He was born from Mary. He died on the cross. They're just going to start shouting stuff out, and you can record it there. And then when they've gotten to a lull, the next bullet tells you what to do. Emphasize the point that Jesus died, he was buried, and rose from the dead. Remind the children that this is what Christians celebrate each year on a very special and holy day. And who can name the holy day when we celebrate that Jesus rose from the dead? Raise hands. You. Yes, Easter is right. That's when we celebrate that day. And then, that last bullet. So we're going to be reading about Jesus rising from the dead in today's lesson, and we're going to explore why that's important for us today. So then we're concluded with that particular section. The next, seek, that's going to take about 30 minutes, and there's little sub-units within this seek. So again, same thing. There are instructions to you to follow. So you can start at the top bullet and kind of work your way down. And as a volunteer teacher, everyone's going to have their own style and approach to the curriculum. It's important for sacraments that you follow the lesson plan reasonably faithfully. If you review a lesson plan in advance and it tells you to do an activity that you just think is going to get the kids a little bit too spun up, or the kids aren't going to get because you don't really get that activity, you can deviate a little bit and improvise as long as you adhere to those lesson objectives that are at the beginning. That's the key part. So you stay on plan, stay on task. So there's 8 units in our reconciliation unit. Now, our salvation history unit. This is a little bit of a different unit because this was written by previous IHM staffers. So IHM, Immaculate Heart of Mary, we developed this curriculum. And I was actually in the first year of volunteer teachers that taught this for the very first time. We were receiving each lesson like the week beforehand because they were writing them 2 weeks before we were going to be teaching the lesson in class. It was crazy. But I actually have a great fondness for this curriculum, and I think that you will too. The one thing that I want to say, this will have a lot of the same features that the reconciliation curriculum has. The one thing that I found as a volunteer was there's a little bit too much content to cover in each lesson. So I would go ahead and, let's scroll through this thing. This is important to review. So take time to read these initial pages. It's going to help you understand the entirety, the whole of the curriculum that you're going to be teaching. But let me get to the actual lessons. So this is our first lesson. There's a lot of content here. And there's even optional activities given if you have time. As you go through this first lesson, you're gonna maybe get a feel for how long it takes you to cover the lesson, and you're going to start knowing, like, I'm gonna have to cut this out, or instead of doing the booklet activity in class, we're just gonna send it home. That kind of thing. You need to adhere to the lesson objectives, but I'm telling you, you're probably gonna have too much to cover in the classroom, unless you're very quick. So, and you have a very quiet class, that could happen as well. But just the same as our reconciliation unit, you're going to see an overview of the lesson. You're going to see what are called themes. Those are like those key points, those key learning objectives. It's giving you a breakdown of the schedule that you should be following for the lesson. So you'll know if you're running really long or running really short based on how much time it takes you to cover each area. And then just the same, there's bulleted instructions that you just follow to implement this lesson plan. So it's the same as reconciliation in that way. Now, I want to share a little bit of a hot tip. Sorry, I have to move something around. Let's see. Here we go. The link. Sorry, I'm improvising this, as you can tell. So something kind of interesting about the Salvation History unit is, again, this was written by IHM staff. And so the curriculum is ours. We actually received permission from St. Mary's Press to use their Bible and some of their featured stories in our curriculum. So you'll see that as you read through the initial pages of the curriculum. But there isn't like an online module to support the Salvation History unit because we wrote it ourselves. So originally in the past, if a kiddo missed one of these lessons, it was up to the parents to actually take the teaching plan, what I just showed you, and teach it to the kiddos at home. You can imagine that there was not a great success rate for completing at-home work. And so we just had to make the call of whether we were going to hold a kiddo back from the sacraments because they missed Salvation History unit lessons, or if we were just going to let them through. And, you know, I let people through, at least when I took over the program. So to help parents at home, and to help the online families as well, I took the time to record on YouTube all of the lessons. So I can share the link with you if you're interested, and you could actually play these. So if you are planning
your car door when you're trapped underwater. A lethal design flaw in all recent.
All right.
Hi, this is Kit, and I'm excited to be on a journey with you through our salvation history.
All right, it's possible that you didn't hear any of the audio on that because I'm not sure that I was sharing the audio correctly, but something for you to consider, especially if you're like sharing lesson planning with another teacher and you wanted to just kind of get an idea of what a lesson, you know, is driving toward. I have all of these on YouTube. So they're obviously slightly deviated in the curriculum because you're teaching on a screen to a single end user instead of to a classroom. So I changed some of the activities, but the overall lesson objectives will be the same. So you could actually use this to preview what you're going to be covering in class if you wanted to. So I thought I would share that as well for you to be aware of. Otherwise, the Salvation History unit is our largest curriculum in any of the sacramental preparation courses. So it is 10 lessons. And the way that it's going to work is we're going to start with reconciliation in the fall, and then we're going to move to Salvation History in the spring. And that's because of where the Christmas holidays land. Instead of splitting a unit in half, you know, bridging Christmas, we conclude before Christmas, and then we start with Salvation History anew in the new year. So 10 lessons is a lot. Lesson 5 is actually watching a movie. So when you get to lesson 5, we'll be watching the Prince of Egypt in the classroom. So there's nothing to teach that day, which is so it gives you a little bit of a midway break from your lessons. Otherwise, the purpose of salvation history is we are instilling in children the understanding of what a covenant is, and that is, God making us a part of his family is what a covenant boils down to in the most simple sense. It's God bringing us into his family. And the way that we move through the sacraments and through salvation history is on the covenant level. So starting with Adam, moving through Noah, Abraham, Moses, David, the prophets, and Jesus Christ at the end. And you're going to see as we teach lessons, God extends a covenant with someone, and then they eventually break the covenant and God has to re-extend the covenant again. And we keep breaking our covenants. But with each covenant, he actually grows the number of people that are brought into his family through that covenant. So with Adam and Eve, that covenant is with a couple. With Noah, the covenant is with a family. Abraham, the covenant is with a tribe. Then with Moses, a nation. David, a kingdom. And then all the way to Jesus. Jesus actually accepted on our behalf the eternal covenant, and he is unable to break it. He can keep the covenant when we could not. He keeps the covenant in our place. So he extends the covenant to the entire world through the Catholic Church, through his church on earth. So that gives you an eagle eye of where we're building toward. So you're going to be repeating a lot about covenants, and you're going to be talking about God growing his covenant, and that he takes our, human weakness, how we break our covenants and we disobey again and again and again. And he keeps building and including more people in the covenants because he overflows with generosity. So that's a lot of the purpose behind the salvation history unit. It's a very interesting unit to teach. And there's actually a couple of really great things for you as a catechist to maybe consider. One is, let's see, give me a moment. It'll be funny if it's right up here somewhere. Oh, it is. That's hilarious. Okay. So one, here, I'm gonna stop sharing this screen. So something that I would highly recommend if you can get your hands on is this book. It's called Bible Basics for Catholics. It's by John Bergsma. And a lot actually of the illustrations that we use in the salvation history unit come from his book. So it's really good. It's very like covenant oriented overview of the Bible. And then if you've done anything in the Great Adventure series, I have not done anything in the Great Adventure series per se, but just starting to break open the cover on this Bible that I received recently, there's some really, really strong ties between, the Great Adventure Bible and our salvation history unit. So those are both would be meaningful to review before launching into the salvation history if you want to do some kind of personal background reading. Otherwise, before you teach salvation history, read that first part of the book. So sometimes you can skip like the beginning part of a lesson plan or breeze through it, skim it. I would not. You need to read to understand the intent of the curriculum. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to understand the overarching theme of the salvation history unit. So this was a long video, but I hope that it prepares you to teach and volunteer in our year 1 classrooms. See ya. Boop-a-doop-a-doop. Bye, Julia.